Let's feed our heads. Welcome to this series on British and American literature. Today I'm going to tell you about Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Okay. About 200 years ago, an 18-year-old girl did a most remarkable thing. She invented freaking science fiction. Isn't that astonishing? At the age of 18. And I'm going to tell you the story about how that happened today. Okay. There'll be a couple of guys in this story too. Her husband, Percy B. Shelley, and their friend, George Gordon, Lord Byron. Both poets, very great poets. Okay, Mary Shelley was born Mary Godwin into a family of political rivals, radicals. Her father, William Godwin, was a socialist utopian. Her mother, Mary Wollstonecraft, was widely considered to be the founder of the women's rights movement 200 years ago. When Mary was only 16 years old, much to the displeasure of her father, she became involved with a young radical poet, Percy Shelley. Although Shelley died just before his 30th birthday, he had already produced work that made him one of the greatest poets in the English language. The critic Harold Bloom says that he is second only to Shakespeare. He did that before 30? He was certainly the greatest of the Romantic poets. It's impossible to exaggerate, really, how much his work has influenced our culture. He invented a way of speaking in verse that has permeated our popular culture, the ways in which we talk about our feelings, about romantic love. So if you listen to a popular love ballad today, you're going to hear phrases from Shelley. Shelley was a political radical. He was not very liked by the powers that existed at the time because he opposed monarchy. He wanted to see revolution of the kind that happened in France and the United States. He wanted to see democracy. He wrote a Declaration of the Rights of Man long before the UN Declaration of the Rights of Man. There are some people who think that, in fact, he was killed by British intelligence because of his radicalism. He died when his boat was destroyed while sailing on the Gulf of Sperizia in Italy. It's possible that British intelligence capsized him. His body was recovered on the beach and buried there, alas. Okay, he was also brilliant. I mean, he could read classical Greek by the fire without a dictionary. So, a smart sort of guy. All right. Let's see. He was, in addition, his poetry, his romantic poetry, had made him very famous and very popular with the ladies. He was kind of like a counterculture hero of his day. In 1816, Mary, who had eloped with Percy, or run away from her home with Percy, and Mary and Percy and Mary's half-sister, Claire Clairmont, joined Lord Byron in a rented house on Lake Geneva in Switzerland for a holiday. Byron was rich and could afford this kind of thing. Shelley was also from a noble family, but his father had disowned him for his radical beliefs and behavior. They were joined by a young English doctor, Byron's personal physician, John Polidori. Okay. The friends had planned to amuse themselves that summer, in 1816, by sailing and swimming and, various indoor activities. In fact, so scandalous was the elopement of Percy and Mary that people around the lake wore their telescopes out trying to see what was going on inside the villa where they were staying. But it turned out that that was the year when there was a terrible eruption of a volcano across the world. Tortuga, I think, was the name of the volcano. I'd have to look that up. At any rate, the volcano sent so much stuff into the air that this became known as the year without a summer. All the way in Indonesia, this volcano was, and yet it threw enough dust into the air to change the climate worldwide. The weather was awful, and the kids had to stay inside and find other things to amuse themselves. And they did. One of their favorite amusements was to read German ghost stories to one another. And Byron, the poet George Gordon, Lord Byron, proposed a contest. They would each write a ghost story of their own to tell to the others. Now, naturally, since both Percy Shelley and Lord Byron were famous poets already, even though, despite their youth, everybody expected them to win the contest, one of them. But Mary Shelley surprised everyone by writing the best story of all, a novella that would make her internationally famous. Though she was only 18 years old, it was here, at this time, for that purpose, that she wrote the novel Frankenstein. And Polidori, for the same contest, wrote the first vampire novel, something called The Vampire, spelled with a Y, Vampyr. A riveting tale, but not nearly as good as Mary's. She won the contest and immortal fame. Consider this fact. Human beings have never created a new technology, that they haven't used, not to my knowledge. They have never looked at a technological possibility and said, well, that's crazy. I mean, that's really crazy. We shouldn't do that. But that's just the question that Mary Shelley's novel raised. Should we do that? And there, at the age of 18, Mary Shelley created this new genre of literature, the science fiction novel. At the age of 18, she created science fiction novels. I mean, that's amazing. And a new area of moral thought about the limits on what people should do technologically, on the limits that should be placed on technology and scientific progress. Now, Mary's idea, like science fiction novels today, was based on the latest scientific discoveries. The Italian scientist Luigi Galvani had discovered that if you hooked up the nerve cells of a frog's legs to electricity, the muscles would twitch by themselves, as though they were alive. And there was much speculation that this animal electricity was the secret to life itself. In Mary's novel, a young scientist by the name of Victor Frankenstein uses galvanism to reanimate a creature sewn together from the corpses of the dead. Today, the science of the electrical properties of cells, including neural cells, is called electrophysiology. Oh, by the way, the creature in Mary's novel is not named Frankenstein. That's Victor Frankenstein, his creator. The creature has no name. Now think how sad that is. He animates the creature, Frankenstein does, and he's so frightened by it that he runs away. "Daddy!" And he runs away. Well, he doesn't actually say daddy. Frankenstein's creation is rejected and unloved and even unnamed. So, at the age of 18, Mary Shelley not only created this novel that was internationally famous and is down to this very day, a novel that people have made countless films about, and she introduced this theme, this astonishing theme about the dangers of uncontrolled technology and scientific innovation. She asked this question: should we ever put limits on what people do with technology? Amazing. Now, science fiction is fiction that uses current scientific developments, and it typically asks this question, the question that Mary Shelley asked. Should we place limits? Should we say there are some things that we could do technologically that we just should not do? For example, should we create greater than human artificial intelligence? Well, the late physicist Stephen Hawking thought that if we did that, it would be the end of the human race. Or should we do genetic engineering of human beings, of human babies, creating designer babies? You know, I asked a friend of mine recently, a geneticist, whether he thought that this was being done in China, and he said, "You bet your life it is." Wow. Now here's the thing. A single change in a single allele in the human genome can make a toddler stronger than a grown adult. And this technology has the potential to create people who are taller and more physically agile and more intelligent and more creative. But, you know, this stuff is expensive. It's expensive to do this kind of thing. And it's a technology that will be available to the very wealthy and not to the masses at first. So we'll get, you know, there's a lot of speculation that there will be this speciation of human beings into the ones who are genetically advanced and the ones who are not. Where does that leave us? It's a good question. Or consider life extension and the end of aging. Scientists have recently discovered, I think it was Lynn Margulis who made this discovery, that when our cells replicate, they lose these things called telomeres at the ends of the chromosomes. And when these are all gone, the thing unravels. You know, it's like the aglet on a shoelace, right? The plastic piece that holds the shoelace together, these telomeres. Well, so we know, and we've only known since the 1970s, that this is a major mechanism in why we age. And knowing the mechanisms for why we age means that we might be able to come up with ways to cure aging. Now imagine that. Imagine a world in which people don't get old and don't die of old age. We could be a very short time away from that. We might be living in a time when the children who are among us today will live 200, 300, 400 years. It's possible. Or how about high-tech surveillance? How about having the ability to have satellites in the sky that record everything that people say, every electronic communication on planet Earth? Do we really want that kind of power in people's hands? Or consider brain-computer interfaces. This is also a technology that is in its infancy, but it exists. Ones that, computer chips that interact with the neural cells. So imagine people with this sort of super vision, so they can see the microscopic, they can see the macroscopic, in addition to the regular vision that we have, or that have vision that extends beyond what we call visible lights into the other wavelengths of the electromagnetic spectrum. Do we really want brain-enhanced humans with chips in their heads? Human computer hybrids or cyborgs. How about education versus via computers as opposed to education, in the old-fashioned way with textbooks and teachers and the like? That old-fashioned way, it's been the way we've always done it. Adults who knew something taught kids who didn't the things that they thought were most important, and it was a personal interaction, that of teacher and student. What is lost when it becomes an interaction with a machine? Now, these kinds of questions, are the questions that science fiction deals with. That's what science fiction does. And Mary Shelley created the first science fiction novel. It takes a new science, it extrapolates what terrible thing might be done with it, and asks the question, do we really want to do that? That's pretty remarkable for an 18-year-old girl 200 years ago. Okay, that's the wrap on Mary Shelley and Frankenstein. Go read the novel. It's very unlike the movies. And it is a remarkable thing because it asks this key question. Should we place limits on our technologies? Years ago I came up with something I called Robert's Rule. When you are asking yourself whether a new technology is a good idea, think of it this way. Would you want this to be in the hands of the worst person at the worst time? I think that's a pretty good rule for deciding on this question that Mary Shelley raised. Should we place limits on technological and scientific progress? Okay, pretty remarkable thing for an 18-year-old girl. All right, now go off and feed your head